Today's episode is an interview with Zeshan B, who creates powerful protest music for our fragmented modern times. He just released Only in My Dreams, the third single off his album Melismatic, out May 15th. It follows Brown Power, a civil rights anthem accompanied by a music video that featured Dr. Cornel West, Ilhan Omar, and many other luminaries. Zeshan has performed everywhere from Lincoln Center to Barack Obama's White House. Our conversation was a deep dive into the agony of hoping for a better world while living in this one. Also, please note this episode contains a mention of suicide. With that said, I'm Eden, and this is Crossroads.
Don't wake me up, 'cause you know that I've had enough. I'll go back to sleep, 'cause this world isn't what it seems. The streets are paved with gold, nobody's left out in the cold. We can live like kings and queens, only in my dreams. The rich getting richer, you know. I'm here.
Honestly, I'm really honored to be able to premiere this amazing song. I was really moved by your essay about Only in My Dreams and by everything I read about all your work. So I just wanted to start off by asking about that song and if there was anything you wanted to say about the inspiration behind it. It seems to come from this really like a dark personal place, but also a dark political place, but yet it's also about having a dream for the future, which is just so powerful to me. And I wanted to know if you wanted to share any stories about how the song came about and how you wrote it.
Well, 2019 was, really heavy year for me. I was already sort of struggling with sort of insomnia and major depression, manic depression, and my best friend had committed suicide, and it was very difficult to sort of cope with that, and the enormous sort of cascade of grief and regret and sort of the feeling like I couldn't have been there for him. I wasn't there for him. This was my best friend in college, and I had falling out with him that didn't quite get resolved before his death, and so it's just I still live with so much guilt over that, and it's hard to put it in context, but just 4 years ago his own brother was shot and killed in Chicago, and that's sort of a very Chicago story of just gun violence and gangs, and this kid was just walking home from the grocery store and got held up and robbery gone wrong and shot and killed. And so as you can imagine, it's hard to kind of talk of the death of my friend without speaking of his brother, and that sort of it's really it's hard to unpack all that. It's hard to describe just the overwhelming nature of it, and it's like the irony of it all, because their family at the time lived in Pakistan, and when his brother was shot and killed in 2014, my best friend Mukarram, I arranged for his brother's body to be sent to Pakistan for burial. That's what his parents wanted, and I went and visited Mukarram, and I went to Pakistan. I went and spent time with his family there, and then 5 years later, uh, here I am doing the exact same thing. It's like, sending a body to some like far off corner of this is my best friend. And so and I went to Pakistan. I made this what I felt was like a grief pilgrimage there to pay my last respects to him. And that was at the end of 2018 and 2019, the beginning of 2019. And so I felt like I was sort of, let's just say frayed at the edges, and I couldn't sleep. I just felt like I was sleepwalking through life, And then, of course, during that time, by that point, it had been 3 years of, being in this sort of twilight zone of the, Trump presidency, the Senate hearings, around, Bob Mueller, and then, of course, the impeachment stuff, and nothing came of it. And it was just, it just felt like things were just, going from bad to worse. And so my dreams were very weird then. It was very strange. I would have these nightmares that, it was like, if I ever did get any sleep, I'd get these very, very, vivid, horrific dreams, and then I'd wake up sort of in a cold sweat, and I wouldn't want to go back to sleep because I was afraid that I would get, I'd just get more nightmares, and so it was sort of amidst all that, and I once again seeing the enormous disparities and inequalities all around me in America. I also witnessed, I live in Baltimore currently, and, this is a city that is well known for, the despair of the drug trade. And, I saw a shooting right in front of my apartment, 2 kids, they must have been teenagers, just shooting at each other. And, I think it was kind of like a fog. I think of it as like a cloud, sort of hazy fog that I felt like I was walking through. But I guess if there's anything that came out of it, it was this song. And I really I sort of poured my heart out into it. And, it's so personal that this song really is my favorite song of the entire album. I think if there's any of the songs that I'm really proud of, it's this one. It's just so real to me. It's so visceral, and I love the music, and I love the way we produced it and the way we arranged it, and but a lot to unpack. So sorry, it's kind of long-winded.
No, not at all. I mean, thank you for sharing, and that it sounds like a lot of heaviness for you, and a lot of weight for you, and also to put in a song. And it's always interesting to me how music seems to appear at these really kind of really end of the road times. It's like you think that you've reached the end of the road, and then there's just music there. I mean, has that been a theme for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think that I've noticed within me that the one thing, especially as I continue to, I felt like I got to a good place in the sort of the summer and early fall of 2019. I figured out that I had sleep apnea, that I had severe sleep apnea, that I wasn't getting. I basically couldn't breathe when I was sleeping, right? So it was like I was suffocating it's almost like my grief was like suffocating me. and once I got treated for that, things started to change. I started to like see things more, I guess things just felt a little bit lighter. And I think that, one thing I've sort of realized throughout all this is that I think the one thing that's propping me up, that was propping me up at a time like that, and certainly at a time like this during this pandemic is music. I mean, it's the only thing that, I struggle getting out of bed. It's tough to be out of work right now. It's tough to be not being able to do what I do. I've always been someone that, and this goes into like, mental health, like, and it's so important that we address these, it's a real thing. And I hate how taboo it is. And I mean, I think it's getting better. I think we're having more and more conversations about, people are more and more open about, going for therapy, getting medication, etc. And I mean, it's been, I've been lucky to have had like my wife is a doctor, and like someone who takes mental health extremely seriously and looks at it like any other, looks at just the same way that you would look at diabetes or cancer or coronavirus for that matter. Is, I mean, it's a real thing. It affects your body, it affects your mind, and yet somehow we don't have, 5K runs for, depression. We don't have, NFL players don't wear some stupid colored glove, pink colored glove to, commemorate it. Or, I mean, they should. I think it should be blue. But like, we don't have that as a society. That we don't. It's not legitimized. And I hope that we get to that place. And but yeah, I mean, I think, to me, the one thing that's been propping me up is just that's keeping me going is just that slight glimmer of idealism that, somehow the human spirit and the sort of, karma and all these other things that, like, putting good into the world, putting good vibes in the universe will only result in like a positive sort of atomic energy. And I think it's that bit of sort of flower child idealism that like is, keeping me afloat now. Otherwise, I think I would be committed, Yeah, and I'm not alone. And at a time like this, during this pandemic, it is, last year, I'll tell you honestly, I felt alone. Like, who else do you know whose, best friend commit suicide, and then only 4 years earlier his brother was killed, you know what I mean, like, and his brother was like my little brother, like, that's a very sort of like unique catastrophe, and so I felt alone in that. At least this year I'm not alone, at least right now I'm not alone, and that's why I think it's so important for us to talk with each other, to engage each other, to therapeutize, for lack of a better word. And I guess that's what I'm doing with you, right? You're like my shrink right now.
I mean, that's what I'm here for. No, but I mean, you're yeah, I mean, you're definitely not alone, which is powerful, but also I think a lot about how there's so much grief among people, and that has to be connected to some larger things. It's not just people in their own heads, like making, like, it's just, I just feel like there are much larger forces at work, and I feel like those are really present in everything I've heard of your music so far as well.
Oh wow, thank you. I'm glad it resonates with you, and and that's, even like the small, like Bill Withers when he died. I mean, I was such a wreck over that. He, this was somebody who was, like one of my biggest, if not biggest, like musical idols, and was like the soundtrack of my childhood. And, and part of that is because, and I think part of my grief was that, like, I always felt like his music was something I could latch onto when I wasn't feeling so well, and like, it spoke to me. And I guess I've always wanted to put out music that anybody can relate to. It doesn't matter. I don't have a target audience. I don't have that kind of vision. I don't have that kind of myopic view of how music should be made or who should be marketed to. I just don't give a shit about stuff like that. For me, it's more like, what's honest and what is what tells the truth about you and the world around you. And I think, but I'm lucky to have whatever support I have had over the years, and and no pandemic is going to stop me from you know continuing on this sort of musical journey. I mean, right now, it's like I said, it's the only thing that gets me out of bed. I mean, there's my cat too. She also, my wife and my cat, they're also very important forces in my life.
Yeah, definitely. I actually was just watching in one of your videos you were talking about the blue note in blues, which is something that I
Uh
go
huh.
back to when talking
Uh
about
huh.
stuff like this. Well, I mean, it's such a complicated thing, but it's like this core energy that gets to the heart of these matters and then kind of moves them forward. I don't know. Is that something um that you go
Oh,
back
sure.
to?
I mean, it's funny. There's, you know, I feel like I got so much great advice from growing up, and kind of insights from. And I don't know if this answers your question, but like from the elders like around me who honestly saw so much worse than I have over my life. I mean, I didn't. I've been depressed, and I've had loss, but I didn't get my you know my granary, my grain shop burned down in the partition of 1947 in India that my grandfather dealt with. I didn't like my mom and dad. I didn't. My neighborhood wasn't hit by riots. I didn't have to go into hiding in my ancestral village like my dad did. You know what I mean? Like, so these are people who have. I didn't have to, migrate to a different country with like a couple $100 in my pocket. Like, these are people who are the hard knocks, and it's. I remember my dad once telling me, he said, he said, what the problem with you is? He's like, you don't enjoy your misery. You need to enjoy it a lot more. He's like, the minute you start enjoying your misery, and it was kind of interesting. It was something very kind of Buddhist about that, like where it was like, even though we're not Buddhist as like it was something very, very like life is, the core of existence is suffering, so embrace it, and and that's kind of like I think about people like my pops, and it's like I think that's how he's dealt with everything. He's just like, oh, I'll just enjoy the parade, or I'll just it's like enjoying one's misery, and that's kind of what I think we do as musicians. I question why I do this. Like I often stay up at night thinking, why do I go on stage? I mean, honestly, I deal with a lot of stage fright, and I don't really let it show, but like inside, like a lot of artists, I have a lot of. I mean, I contend with stage fright, and so it's all, going on stage is almost like a out of body, almost traumatic experience for me, that like I need to like decompress when it's all over. And I keep asking myself, why do I keep doing it? And I think it's because it's what Dad said. It's like, you got to enjoy the misery. You have to, because and the other thing is, I only sing sad songs. Like I very rarely do I sing happy songs. But I take joy in that misery. And that's what's interesting about performing music, and that's maybe the hardest thing about the pandemic right now, is that yes, I can put out my music and try to turn people on to it, and bring attention to it and whatnot, but I can't do that thing that I always enjoyed the most, about the most gratifying aspect of being a musician, and that's performing for people in front of them. I mean, like right now, I just did a sort of a short concert for like a mini concert for Men's Health magazine, sort of raising because it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and we this it was a partnership with the National Alliance of mental illness. And I did that. I also did a home concert for Lincoln Center recently, and both those were crazy, because it's like I have no idea what's going on the other end. I feed off of that energy of the people. So anyway, the point is, I think being a musician, you have to it is by nature a very difficult life. It's not for the faint of heart, and you know, I think you have to kind of enjoy your misery a little bit, and you know, I think I have, and I think that over the years, you know, and that's why right now I have to kind of like, I think what's hard about right now is that like I have to actually, now that I don't have as much to distract myself, like, okay, I've got to go do this show or that show or do this interview or that. I mean, just sort of, you know, the day-to-day, you know, usual stuff that a musician does. Like, now that I don't necessarily have those tools at my disposal, I'm forced to reconcile myself with the stuff, that the pain inside me that I was either ignoring or just distracting myself from by, you know, the day-to-day humdrum. Now I'm forced to like deal with my feelings, and I think a lot of people are, and so I think it's really important that we, you know, you know, reconcile ourselves with those innermost thoughts, and that we lean on each other too, you know, and like I said, this podcast right now is a therapy session. So
yeah, I mean, I think that you're definitely not alone in feeling like you have to, or that this is kind of a confrontational period of silence. I've read a lot. There's like an interesting contrast or duality between reading about all the like terrible things that are happening, but also the ways that people are kind of going inward too, and asking how can we, you know, if we don't want to go back to the world that we had before, both in terms of personal and larger scale issues, like how can we maybe use this to go to a different kind of future? And
absolutely. I think that in order to enact the social and political change that as a society we desperately need, we need to channel empathy, right? I mean, like apathy and dystopia have just kind of been, and you know, cynicism have been the order of the day, and there's, I feel like it's like a spiritual blackout that, you know, that we've faced, that has everything to do with why, you know, this like monstrous, you know, human being is like in the Oval Office right now. It has everything to do with why, you know, this sort of kleptocracy of the far right, of the Republicans, you know, the Republican Party has become a party of kleptocrats, you know. It has everything to do with that, and it has a lot to do with also why the popular music now is becoming more and more vacuous and more the kind of, like, you know, like one of my favorite sort of public figures is Dr. Cornel West, and he says it so well, and I was really honored to have him in my music video, Brown Power, but he says it so well that, like, you know, the music that comes out nowadays, it's the kind of music that'll titillate your body, but it won't stir your soul, you know, and why is that? Because as a society, like, empathy and tenderness is low. I mean, why is it that, like, you know, so many marriages end in divorce? Why is it that you know, we can't even like hold down relationships with each other? Why is it that you know, it's just so many things. I mean, why is it that we don't care about those who don't have that, who you know, who have less than us? Why, you know, how do we? What does it say about us? You know, and I think that, you know, we should hold society accountable for, you know, how the most vulnerable are treated and how the most downtrodden are treated. That's the mark of like a great society. And I think that I do have hope for us millennials, you know, starting to kind of like get a seat at the table. We're not quite there yet, but like, I think that there's so much we can do, because we're not entitled. People think we're like spoiled and entitled. We are not. We are literally the first generation of Americans who has it worse than our parents, you know? I mean, when I got out of college, it was right in the middle of it was just the start of the recession. I mean, you know, we lived through this coronavirus thing. I mean, we are not an entitled bunch of people. We've kind of like, there's no American dream for us, you know what I mean? there's no piece of the pie for us, sort of like how I alluded to in the song "Only in My Dreams," and so I think that we're going to be a strong generation. I think we're going to enact some amazing changes, and even the generation that's coming after us. I do have a lot of. I am very proud of my peers. I'm proud of my generation. And I want us to just empathize. I want us to hold each other to a higher standard, and that's what I try to do in my music.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I definitely think the apathy that you were talking about on a larger scale seems also connected to. I guess it seems connected to me to just the mental health crises going on that we're talking about. I think they're similar symptoms of maybe a larger sickness, and it's just it's cool to hear people putting that out in the open more and more. I think like as there's more apathy, it seems like there's also this growing desire, maybe among younger generations especially, to actually change things. It's like why not?
Absolutely. I mean, and we see. I mean, we're more open about our mental health. We're more open about getting what we need. We're more open about advocating for equality and for justice. I mean people out there, I mean like these protesters in Michigan, these people are sick, honestly. Like I'm not saying I feel bad for them, I don't, but they are sick people. They like the fact that this country has such a corrosive and disgusting gun culture. It's sick. It's disgusting. And it's people's minds have been corroded over generations to believe falsehoods and hypocrisy and at the core of it is it's just I don't think that as a society we've prioritized, mental health. And I wanted to add something, if it's okay, that something is interesting that for me, being an artist and sort of having my palm on the pulse of that has is its own sort of story, but also seeing when we talk about public health, having a wife. My wife being a resident doctor, someone who's, the sort of grunt, for the medical system, for the healthcare system. These are the people who are really, right now, she's on the front lines of COVID and really, just crushing it. You know what I mean? And full throttle. And to get her perspective on this has been fascinating over the years, and she has made me very aware of the disparities in health, in healthcare provided to or I guess or not provided to minorities, particularly blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. And right now, she was the first to, I guess, shine a light to me about and that's now we're now starting to find out that COVID is disproportionately affecting people of color in communities that don't have access to technology, that don't have access to quality healthcare. And having that perspective from my wife has been extremely insightful. It depressing too, and kind of. But I think that as a couple, we have kind of fed off of each other's energy and sort of the different things that we see in our day to day, and as being an interracial couple too, that the fact that she's Hispanic, the fact that I'm South Asian, I think we represent we represent 2020. We represent the change that I think America is going to continue to see, and the change that people, those the protesters in Michigan, those type, the far right or whoever, these people don't want to see. And I've been very strident about that in my music, and And I think that our generation is going to be the one to really, kick down the doors. And I just can't wait to be a part of it. I mean, I don't think I'll sit on the sidelines. I'm not just gonna eat popcorn and watch it happen. I really want to be a part of that, and my wife does too, and a lot of our peers and a lot of our friends and family want to be a part of that too. And it's so exciting to it's invigorating to be around that.
Yeah, my mom's on the front lines of COVID in New York also, so I definitely hear, and she definitely says similar things, like just about the inequality in terms of who shows up, and I always think of that as another. I mean, it's like we're definitely not all in the same boat in this crisis, and there's these really deep roots of just colonialism that I see everywhere still, and I think they're all connected too.
Absolutely. I mean, you even saw in New York, where you are right now, just over the weekend, police are handing out masks to, hipster white kids sitting in the park, and then, people, black people they're beating the shit out of black people, what does it say, Your mother's, she's in healthcare? Oh, yeah, so you know what it is. Well, yeah, I mean, and I think that if it's anything that, maybe this pandemic will open our eyes to these things, because we're forced to not be just distracted by the day-to-day. We have to take account of everything. We're forced to, take a deep look inside. And, I just hope that come November and onwards that it will, translate into the, social political change that we so need.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree, and I mean, thank you for all your work in this and putting out your music. I mean, you've done so much powerful work, and I feel like just beginning with I feel like you've used just multimedia really well, which is something I was going to mention before, but it's just so cool to see all the ways that you've started building these connections online, even if it doesn't feel like they're being echoed back to you.
Yeah, it's tough, I mean, I'm in a strange boat that, I've had a lot of great opportunities and been blessed with them, but, I don't have a big fan base. I'm not an influencer. And I don't think I ever will be. I don't and it's tough because I think there's so much pressure on musicians to kind of do that, to be that influencer type, or just be very savvy with social media. And what's hard is that what's been hard for me over the years is I social media literally gives me anxiety. Posting shit, telling people what I've been doing or whatever. I do it because I have to. I mean, I feel like it's just, you just have to. But that kind of shit, I think also doesn't really help my mental health, because I'm I don't know, it's just this whole cool fog bullshit of trying to showcase one's best life in, and I don't really know how I fit in that. I when my wife comes home, I just put my phone away. I don't want to talk. I don't want to post shit. I don't want to, if I'm doing something, I want to do it. I don't want to post about it. I don't want to, and I've suffered. I mean, and I don't, and that's the other thing with my music. I don't want to, take any shortcuts. I don't want to, just throw on some trap beats, instead of using real drums or real. It's just, and I don't know. I feel like life would be a lot easier for me maybe if I did, or if I, tried to be, Mr. Influencer, and and I mean, there's a lot of that pressure to do that, but I don't think I ever will, and I hope I never will.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's all that stuff. Just influencer posts just kind of disappear, and then I feel like you have to be engaged with what means something to you. Absolutely. I mean, and what to me, it's real life is what's just happening right in front of you. It's not the screen. I mean, I go for, sometimes I just, like I said, social media gives me anxiety. So sometimes I just don't want to post that shit. I don't care to and it's not like anybody, for the week or two, for the
2 3 weeks that I don't post shit, like it's not like anybody comes asking me, "Hey man, how have you been? Like, you all right? Are you?" Nobody gives a shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's not real life. You know what I mean? We've created like this alternate reality that's not real life, and that's another thing that I want us to take account of. You know, because while we're, you know, looking at the screen and doing all that, like the rug is being swept out from underneath us, and we're being played. You know, we're being inundated with mindless crap. Like soulless music and kind of like vacuous pop culture that that's not real. It's, you know what I mean, and it's being put on us to dumb us down. You know what I mean? Like even as society, like when's the last time you've like watched a TV show where they use an interesting word that you might not have heard before that you want to look up in a dictionary? You know what I mean? Like it's like there is a force at play that whether we believe it or not. Like I'm not gonna say there's a deep state or anything, but there is something at play. There is, I believe, a corporate superpower structure that is totally working day and night to dumb us down, and that's why people think that there are these miracle drugs for coronavirus. That's why people are so like incredibly brain dead that they believe in the snake oil that people like Donald Trump sell. It takes a certain level of, in my opinion, like mental illness as well as just like stupidity. Or not actually stupid, but just like that's why there's such a war on facts and reason. And so I hope that during this time, once again, I really hope that we can really kind of just see the writing on the wall and kind of shake our heads a little bit and use our minds. I mean, I think the greatest weapon is not a gun; it's a library card. I'm a proud carrier of many different library cards for Baltimore, for New York, for Chicago. I'm all about the library, yo.
Yeah, I mean, I hate using the word capitalism because it's such a buzzword, but I feel like, I mean, I don't know, I have mixed feelings on social media. I think it's really stressful for sure, but I think it's sometimes, I don't know, good. Sometimes it feels like it can be connecting, yes. But also I feel like it's just when people, when selling products or when the distraction starts to play into it, and that's when
you see the hustle. When you see the hustle, that's when it's like, okay, and that's what I feel like I have to do is kind of sell myself, and it's a reality, whatever. It's like I've learned to kind of accept it, but like that feels really weird to me, but you're right. There are good things. I mean, for example, even with this song "Only in My Dreams," the artwork for it, I'm so proud to say was done by one of my oldest friends from childhood that from when I was like 8-9 years old. Her name is Francesca Gabrielle. She's this amazing visual artist in LA. We had lost touch over 20 years, and then she saw some of my new releases coming out. I released a song called No Sheen, I think, and when I released Brown Power too, and so she reached out to me, and I was like, oh my god, it's Francesca, and we rekindled our friendship over social media, and like, what do you know, the next, we talk, and and the next thing we know, we're working with each other. She designed the artwork, and it's amazing. I'm so proud of it, and like, it's interesting, like she's like, she represents to me someone who was there for me at a time when I moved to like a primarily white area, and I was not used to being around white people before then, and she was the only white kid who would associate with me, who would sit with me at lunch, who would walk with me to and from school, who was nice to me, and like it's like I have that like sort of, she's like a savior, she's like a knights in shining armor. She always had that thing, like, so when I heard from her again, I was like, oh my god. And it's great because now we can sort of, what I'm saying, lean on each other in a time like this, and that came through social media. So that there are, I mean, and how appropriate that for this song, that she came through for me again, when I needed it, and so there is a silver lining, and there is that, like I said, glimmer of idealism that that's still coursing through me and keeping me, this keeps me going, I guess the glimmer of idealism is I'm seeing more and more representation in government of people, people of color, people of different sexual orientation, transgender people, who are, starting to get a seat at the table. It's extremely encouraging. It's exhilarating for me. We're getting there. We're getting ours. Despite all the haters out there, despite all the people out there who are working day and night to thwart us, to delegitimize us, to voters, people who are like, the Republican Party is become a party of voter suppression and kleptocracy, and despite that, we're showing up. You know what I'm saying? Like we're pulling up, and we're still gonna get ours. And that's what my song Brown Power was all about. But that gives me enormous hope for the future. Seeing more and more interracial marriages, forget about marriages, just interracial relationships. Seeing more and more people from the LGBTQ community who lead openly, who lead like an openly LGBTQ lifestyle. That sort of homophobia that existed even when I was in high school is so much less now than it was back then. That gives me a lot of pause. Like, these kids, like the kids in Florida who were fighting, for gun legislation, in Parkland. Like, these kids gave me a lot of hope. This is the generation after me, and they're already very post-racial, post LGBTQ. They're just so much more fluid, but they don't have some of like the baggage that I feel like cats like me grew up with. That gives me a lot of hope. I think that we're as a society becoming more aware of the impact that we're having on the planet. And I'm talking about my generation is doing that, not like the baby boomers. I'm sorry. They just and my dad, who was one of them, said to himself, he said, son, we failed you. And I kind of appreciated that somebody from that generation would actually stopped and said, okay, and stopped for a second and refrain from the same old thing of, oh, you millennials are so spoiled and entitled. And instead just admitted to the fact that we did whatever the hell we wanted. We, destroyed the earth, destroyed the economy, and, kind of screwed you guys over, where was I going with that? I think that we are learning from their mistakes. We are becoming more, we're becoming more aware of climate change. We're more aware. We're not immune to logic and reason and science. And that gives me a lot of hope for the future. And all I can do is really just do my part and expect for others to have high expectations for others. That's something that sometimes is hard to do because you just see the swath of stupidity that exists in a lot of humanity. It's like, oh my God, but these things, they give me, expecting more of other people and having high expectations of my peers and whatnot. I think it gives me hope, and keeps me going. 'cause you know